Hello and welcome to the Guider podcast. And today we have a really interesting conversation for you. This is Phil from Yardstick. Hello, Phil.
Hey, Robert, how you doing?
Absolutely fantastic. And today we're going to talk about, most of the podcasts we have are always these kind of success things. You know, I was poor and now I'm rich and look at me. And this is far more of a story really about ups and downs, and it's a really quite an honest story which will resonate for a lot of people. So Phil, without further ado, would you just like to kind of tell people who Phil is and who Yardstick is for those who don't know?
So we're a marketing agency based in Nottingham, but with people throughout the UK. There are 47 of us now, and we work in a very tight niche. We work with financial advisors, financial planners, and people who supply services to financial advisors and financial planners. We're probably 80% B2C, helping financial advisors and planners win more clients, and about 20% B2B. And then we're about 80% UK, 20% overseas. And we love being in that niche. My background, I used to be a financial advisor. My wife is a financial planner. And financial advice is all we know. So if we get a call from an accountant or a solicitor, it's not for us.
And I just love niches, and it's like some of the conversations we have all the time, which is, you know, how do you get into a niche? How do you find a niche? Is it really better being in a niche? And yet, when I look at the agencies who are more robust and more resilient, you know, 95% of the time you discover that they're in a niche because they're, you know, a big player in a small market. They know more than their clients and all that stuff. That's for another day. So everyone's kind of we started this with a bit of intrigue about, you know, I've been rich and I've been poor, success and failure. Where does this story start, Phil?
A red phone box in Nottingham in 1995.
In 1995.
I know.
Wow.
I'm 51 tomorrow, mate. I know.
No way. I remember that time. That was like, will planes drop out of the sky on Millennium Night? We need to plan for it.
So back in 1995, I was doing telesales, and I'd had enough of walking into the telesales room, seeing a stack of yellow pages, and being told I was ringing campsites in Wales that day. Yeah, I know. And I got the Nottingham Evening Post on a Thursday, because that was jobs day, Nottingham Evening Post on a Thursday. Searched through it, and there was one that I can't remember what the advert said, but I rung up, went along for an interview, and it turned out I was selling life insurance, pensions, and PEPs to friends, family, and frankly, anybody with a bit of a pulse. The pulse was mostly optional. And that meant I, as I say, started as a financial advisor in 1995, and I progressed to being an IFA in 1999. I actually stuck at it. I worked for a firm from 99 to 2006 as an IFA, and then thought running your own business can't be that easy. Or can't be that hard, I should say. Can't be that hard. Let's give it a go. I had some money.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that there is that aha moment that we all go through. I'm sure everyone who's listening understands that moment when, and I remember doing it over a cafe, sitting in a cafe going, £1.50 for a piece of pizza. It's like 10p worth of flour and 10p worth of cheese and tomato. How hard can it be? And I just love that you had that same aha moment. Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. But that aha moment was combined with some share options that I got. So the firm that I was working for, 99 to 2006, they had floated on AIM, and that triggered payment out of my share options. So I had an ego, I had ambition, I thought it was easy, and I got some money in the bank. And that's when I started my own financial planning practice in 2006.
And, you know, quote unquote, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, quite a few things as it turned out. So a lot of my clients came over with me. That was all good. And we thought, let's turbocharge the growth by buying other businesses, buying other firms. And first one went well. So the first one was an asset purchase where we were simply buying the client accounts. And I remember day of completion, it was all leveraged. Come back to that. We paid the money out, and literally we got back 27 filing cabinets of paper files. They arrived on a flatbed truck. The guy who sold us the business, which is a really nice guy called Craig, bought us a laptop and loaded it up with an database. So we had all the information for clients, and we had this income stream coming in, and it was lovely. We were able to go and service those clients. We were able to deliver great value to them, and it worked. It worked brilliantly. That deal was good. We then decided that first one went well, we could do another one. So the second one we did was a share purchase. So rather the first one being an asset purchase, the second one was a share purchase. And that came with clients, but it also came with people. So we bought the infrastructure for the business. We inherited the leases of various different offices. We borrowed money, quite a significant amount of money, from the same firm that lent us the money for the first deal. And we completed on this second deal in 2008. Not a great time to be completing on a deal that was highly leveraged and was dependent for its income on stock market performance. And there were plenty of red flags along the way during the due diligence process that should have meant we pulled out. In fact,
what kind of red flags? It's kind of weird, isn't it? That I mean, I just two things. What kind of red flags, and why didn't you see them as red flags then? Because I'm just curious about that kind of thing.
So I think red flags were the relationship between myself and the vendor was not as good as on the first deal. Some of the people involved, the employees, the team that we were taking on, were unhappy that the deal was being done. They weren't happy with the deal. There were two bloody big red flags. And why did we carry on? This is really interesting. I can remember sat in a room in our offices in West Bridgford, and I said to somebody else who was in the room at the time, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, maybe we should be pulling out. And I rung the lawyer who was involved and said, what's the current bill? How much do we owe you at the moment for this deal? And it was 35,000, something like that in legal fees. And at that point, I thought, fair enough, if we're that far in, we might as well finish the deal. And it was just the wrong, it was just the wrong decision at the wrong time. So those were the two red flags. And that's why we carried on that sunk cost.
And I think that sunk cost thing is really interesting, because the sunk cost, or rather the justification, you know, I just find that fascinating that we choose not to hear it. We have this deal ahead of us. Wow, when everything will be rosy in the future. And also, I suspect because you hadn't failed the first time at that time, you kind of had this sense of, you know, I'm a master of the universe. You know, I bought one business that's successful. Now I can buy another one. What could possibly go wrong?
Yes, and it then rather quickly unraveled. There were significant. There was personnel issues. There was cash flow issues because stock markets had fallen significantly, and the majority of, or a large proportion of our income is what's now called in the financial advice world OAF, ongoing advisor fee, or OAC, ongoing advisor charge, which is generally a percentage of clients' investments. And that was coming in, but it was dropping because as the FTSE and other stock markets around the world were suffering what they did suffer in 2008, that clearly impacted our income. Whilst we were paying out 14% a year on the debt. So our debt was, our monthly payments were not changing. We didn't get any relief from the bank. In fact, we got the exact opposite, which I can talk about in a minute if you want me to. So we were in a situation where debt repayments were static, all our other fees were static, and expenditures were static. Yeah, our income was falling. So not a great place.
Right. So when you used your Lotus 1, 2, 3 or whatever, or maybe you were brought beyond that by then. I'm not quite sure what the timing is. Maybe when you looked at your Excel spreadsheet, could you see the writing was on the wall that these lines just weren't going in the right direction then, or did it take an event for you to realize that it wasn't going to be a happy ending?
It was Excel at the time. We were definitely using Excel at the time. And I think one of the key issues as we were going through it, and I've seen this in other businesses as well, we spent too long trying to sort issue A. And yet when you sorted issue A, that was no longer an issue anymore because B and C had come along. So we were too slow making decisions. And that's not fair. I was too slow making decisions. And I was too optimistic making decisions. So you'd make a small tweak here or a small tweak here, when actually what it needed was a far bigger axe taking to things. We needed to cut more and cut quicker, and we didn't. We cut too slowly and we cut too little. And that was a real problem for us.
But I guess at the time you were trying to do the Mr. Nice Guy stuff, and it'll turn out okay, and something will happen. I remember talking to a guy a couple of months ago whose business was in turmoil, and he said that he went to bed on Friday night thinking the only thing that's going to save the business is a miracle. And on a Saturday morning, he woke up and remembered that he doesn't believe in miracles. and therefore, on Monday morning, he signed up for closing the business down. So we've got business 1, bought that, seemed to be okay. Business 2, not so great. Red flags. And what's the next chapter in this story then?
So it all came together at one point. We had a restructure plan, and we had a board meeting one Friday morning to agree the restructure plan. And colleagues of mine,
just to interrupt, how many people are you roughly at this time?
At that point, there was maybe 22, 24 people.
So it's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah. And there was a few other stakeholders off the side, but we had a restructure plan, and we were putting that to the senior leadership team on a Friday morning. I was in the office that Friday morning just prepping for the meeting, and someone walked in, just an advisor, walked in and said, "Should I have this?" And it was the restructure plan. He had a printed copy in his hand. And I thought that I just printed it to the wrong networked printer. But I hadn't. Somebody in the team had logged in to somebody else's email account, found the restructure plan, and emailed it round to every employee in the business. Yeah. The
Do you
email.
know? Do you know who?
Yeah. We called the
Not
police.
on not on your Christmas card list anymore.
No, the police were involved.
Oh.
Yeah. And the police would have pressed charges if we had asked them to. So everybody in the business had that restructure plan. So as you are trying to focus on saving the business, cash flows, keeping stakeholders happy, keeping banks happy, you've then got a room of people that want to know what's happening. Yeah. And why some people are on this list and some people are on this list. So that was a massive, massive challenge. We then pulled in some external advisors. And their view was, right, we'll restructure and we'll go to the bank and talk about debt forgiveness. And approaching banks 2008, 2009 for debt forgiveness was not an easy thing to be doing. And we wanted to extend the term. We wanted maybe a payment holiday, something along those lines. Yeah, we didn't want debt to be written off. And I recall we headed to Manchester, myself and our business turnaround expert. We headed to Manchester for a pre-agreed meeting at 9:30 with our bank. Went into their reception, signed in the reception's visitors book as you did at the time. And someone at a relatively low level came down and said, meeting's cancelled, we're not meeting with you. We don't think you're serious, we're not meeting with you. So we literally then had to walk away from Manchester and head back to Nottingham. So those two instances, you talked about times when we thought, actually, this isn't happening, this isn't working. They're two instances where we were backed into a corner and it was clearly not going to work out well.
Right. At this point, did you feel that things would actually go pop, or did you still believe that things could turn around?
I think you were still trying to turn it around. You were still trying to save things, as everybody in the business was, and you were looking at ever increasingly desperate ways of trying to turn things around. But in your heart of hearts, you were probably thinking this is heading one way. This is only one way.
And out of interest, I don't know what your situation then was. Did you have family, kids?
So at that time, I had one son who's now 22, and I, at the same time, was splitting up from my son's partner. No, splitting up from my partner. Yeah. So that was happening as well.
So was there any connection between, sorry to ask, but was there any connection between you splitting up with the partner and business not going right and you being, it was just like the relationship wasn't working and then you had business that was going pop simultaneously?
Yeah, they were different compartments. Yeah, there was no relationship between the two.
So who, out of interest, I mean, now you're in a mastermind group, but then who did you talk to? Did you have mates who could understand? Did you have a business network that you could communicate with? Who were you leaning on?
That's, our accountant was very good. There was a kind of pseudo non-exec who was good, but they had other clients. Yeah, they had,
and you were paying them.
Well, yeah, there is that. But they had other clients who were going through similar issues at the same time, because it was a really tough time, 2008, 2009. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it was a really tough time. So there was those two, but there was no real network. There was certainly no mastermind groups. There was nobody like, I don't know, you or David Gilroy or someone like that who were in the group that I could have picked the phone up to. Yeah, it just wasn't really. There just wasn't, and I wish there had been.
Yeah, and I did a thing very quickly for David did a thing called Fuck Up Nights, which are brilliant, where people talk about business failures. And I was a speaker on that, talking about a previous business of mine where there had been a failure, which was nothing to do with me, but I was the one holding the checkbook. And the first question from the audience is, "Oh, yeah, who did you talk to? What was your support network like?" And this was pre-2000, and it was like, support network. I talked to my wife, and that was it. And even then, I had to be a bit guarded because, like, it was like, the kids at school and this lovely home we live in. Things are going to get a bit tricky. So, and I think that's fantastic about now that now there are places you can go to, whereas then there weren't. Right, back to the story. So you're backed against the wall. The bank aren't supporting you. You've got a member of staff who has been divisive. Is that it?
There was then the guy who we bought the second business from. His deferred consideration was clearly at risk, so that was an issue as well. And it was all coming together. It was all coming together. And yeah, it was like walls closing in on you. And whilst your situation was different because it wasn't your fault, this was definitely 80%, 90%, whatever, my fault. Yeah, I made some poor decisions. We shouldn't have bought this second business. And eventually, the bank appointed a business transfer agent to sell the business, and told me to go and pitch the business to some interested parties who were buying it. It was really quite an interesting process as to how it worked. And the bank eventually said that the business is going to get sold to, it was a firm in the West Midlands, actually. It's going to get sold to a firm in the West Midlands. And by the way, here's the PG that you signed. How are you going to repay that? And at the same time, the landlord, who was a lovely lady, said, "There's my PG. How are you going to pay that?" Well, I don't have a business. I don't have any income. So that was an interesting point. The business got sold, and I was left with those PGs. And other than some pretty big and painful lessons about ego, about the importance of not having too deep pockets when you start a business, I'm convinced that we would have been more successful if I hadn't have had the money in my pocket from the shares of the previous business that I sold. Yeah, because
that's really interesting. Hang on. So you're saying because you had relatively deep pockets, you were a bit cocky. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So what's interesting is the Rise at 7 that everyone talks about as being the amazing agency that's grown so quickly. They always tell this story. They had £300,000 in the bank when they opened, and they never had to touch it. And the reply, fairly consistently on the socials, is if you've got 300,000 quid in the bank when you open, you can make tons of decisions which are much more risky because you've got deeper pockets. Whereas if you've got shallow pockets, then you can't do it. I just need to turn that off. So I think it's really interesting that you're more you maybe you take more risk with deeper pockets, and that may or may not work.
Yeah, I completely agree. They just compare and contrast two businesses. The financial advice business, we had a decent amount of money. I mean, it wasn't 300,000, but it was probably half that, maybe a bit more. We had a decent amount of money in the bank. When we started Yardstick in 2017, I put 10,000 in, the only 10,000 I got. My sister, who now is a director of the business with me, Also put 10,000 in, and we never spent it. We sat in coffee shops to work. We didn't have offices. Yeah, we ran from a mobile phone. We used a personal laptop, that sort of stuff. But we didn't spend it.
Yeah.
So it is interesting, and I do think that was one of the big mistakes that we made. There was that, for me, that ambition, ego, deep pockets. It can't go wrong. We did the first deal. Everything must be rosy afterwards. That was a massive lesson.
So where we are now in your story is there's only one way to go, which is it sounds like you avoid insolvency of the businesses, but you don't avoid personal bankruptcy. Is that where the story goes now?
It's not quite. I did avoid personal bankruptcy. I went into an IVA. So
those people who don't know, that's an independent voluntary agreement where you go to the people that you owe money and say, I'll give you 20 pence in the pound or 10 pence in the pound, and I'll do it over the next 3 or 5 years or whatever it is. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, pretty much. I had some buy-to-let properties that I built up over time, and I went into an IVA. You got two choices: bankruptcy or IVA. I went for the IVA, rightly or wrongly, and I did 5 years in the IVA, which was pretty painful, pretty horrible, and then came out of that in 2015.
Right. So, I mean, I always say that losing a business, bankruptcy, insolvency, I'm not quite sure whether it really matters which one, that whole sense of, they describe it as falling out of bed backwards, usually destroys families, friendships, personality, your faith, your belief in people. Everything falls apart, as your identity and your sense of failure in this country. I mean, we know in America it's like a badge of being in business. But how did you feel? How did you survive the world falling apart?
I think, and you're right, some friendships went. There's no doubt about that. Some friendships went, some professional relationships went. But how did I survive? New relationship. Having my son, spending time with him, and a realization that it couldn't get any worse. Yeah, I'd kind of hit bottom financially.
Yeah.
So this cannot get any worse. I still have an ability to go out and earn money. And I kind of got two choices. I can lick my wounds and learn from it and do better next time. Or I can try and blame everybody else, take no responsibility for it, and no good will come out of it. And at the end of the day, nobody died. The sun still came up. Yeah. There's a lot worse going on in the world than had befallen me at that time. And it was my own fault. So it was a combination of things. There was no one light bulb moment, but there was a combination of things that kind of got through it, helped me get through it.
And it is, my wife's quote is always, today's news is tomorrow's fish and chips paper. And what feels dreadful and horrible to you, you imagine, I guess, that everyone's talking about you, but actually there's something else that they want to talk about. It's like they don't remember, you remember every moment of it. But it becomes all a bit of a blur to other people as they pry into other people's lives and rumours and speculation, I guess. Right, so where we've got to is 5 years of IVA, at which point presumably you're then clean and you can have a bank account and you're your banks will be chary of you, but you can operate properly again.
Yeah, you can, but there's still a bit of hangover, you know. So when we set Yardstick up in 17, we needed, as a responsible business owner, we needed various insurances, public liability, professional indemnity, etc. And there was insurers that wouldn't take me because I'd had an IVA. Yeah. And there was still a bit of a hangover, yeah, of that period that you thought you'd gone through the IVA, you thought you'd settled, you got your little piece of paper that said you'd settled the IVA and it was all behind you. And then there was that moment, it was just that one moment where you were kind of pulled back in, yeah, into the world that you'd previously been in. So there was the odd hangover.
And also there's a kind of a, oh, there's no smoke without fire type mentality that goes, I mean, like, if he really, he might do it again. Was he reckless? I mean, was he irresponsible? And yet clearly you weren't struck off, you weren't considered to be a negligent director, you were in business, you made some decisions which didn't work out. This stuff happens all the time. And I think, you know, in the UK, we're brutal, cruel about businesses that don't work. And we're also brutal and cruel about businesses that do work. It's like businesses that are successful, we kind of almost despise. We despise them driving around in a yellow Lamborghini. And we equally despise people who did their very best and it didn't pan out. It's kind of like, it's quite difficult to be a successful entrepreneur, you know, in other people's eyes. You know, it's like quite hard. So there's a kind of a refresh, Control-Alt-Delete. I've tried this, it didn't work. I'm going to try again, which I love. So did you sit down? I'd love to know, did you sit down and say, I'm going to try and open a business? What are the things I'm not going to do this time? And what are the things that I am going to do because I got my fingers burnt really badly last time and I'm not going back there? Is that kind of how it happened, or was it a lot more organic?
Yeah, there is certainly a moment when, so I went off to, I was head of marketing at a financial advice practice that is now run by my wife and her business partner.
Right.
So my job there was to make the phone ring or the email ping with new inquiries, and did that for a period of time. And then I went to work for a IFA network in Knutsford, up in Cheshire. It was my first employed job. I thought I'd give employment a go, and bizarrely really enjoyed it. And I did that from 2014 to 2016, and it gave me back a passion for marketing. It gave me an insight into how larger businesses are run profitably. But the distance, I live in Nottingham, they were in Knutsford, the distance made the commute pretty unenjoyable after a period of time. So I said to them in 2016, this is what I want to do. I want to set up this marketing agency to help financial advisors, because financial advisors, planners, with a few exceptions, are notoriously bad at marketing. Yeah, just Google financial advisor near me and go and look at their websites. And they're notoriously poor. So I knew there was it's that Dragon's Den moment. I've spotted an opportunity in the market. Yeah. And they were really poor. And they weren't served. There wasn't many agencies at the time that specialised in working with financial services. There were a lot of generalist agencies, but there was not many in the niche. So I knew there was that opportunity in the market. I went to my employer at the time and said, look, I want to set this up. Do you want to do this as part of the group? And they said, no, it's not really aligned with our strategic goals, which is fair enough. So handed my notice in. They actually became one of our first clients, which was nice. And 10th of January 2017, we sent at 8 o'clock that morning a launch email to about 15,000 financial advisors. And that's what kicked us off. That's what kicked us off. But to talk to your previous question, there was certainly a list of things that I said I'm not going to do in this new business. Yeah. Signing a personal guarantee, top of that list. Yeah. I'm just not going to do it. We about 5 years ago, we moved from a serviced office to where I am now, where we signed a proper grown-up lease. And we needed to fit out the office. So I thought, do we use cash? Do we use a loan? And I just had one of those letters through from, probably shouldn't name them, but a lender. We all get these letters in the post from certain lenders. So I thought, I'll ring them up and see what their terms are. And they were so disingenuous when they described the personal guarantee that they were asking for. It just reminded me that I'm never going back. No debt, no personal guarantees. So they were top of that list of things that I wouldn't do again. Third, listen to others. Surround yourself by people who are challenging you on a regular basis. So yeah, there were things that I absolutely look back on and sort of gave myself rules in the new business, in Yardstick. And I think they've served us well. We're a much better business because of what I went through in 2008-9 than if I'd not gone through that.
And there's no way, I find that fascinating because I did an MBA when I was aged 30. I'd set up my first business when I was 21. And by the time I got to my MBA, I'd learned by losing my own money, you know, and I think I don't think you can learn in the classroom, you know, and if you do this might happen, look at the graph, blah, 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 blah. You know, and the pain of actually having that conversation with yourself that you've employed the wrong person, or you could have sacked them, or no one else is going to deal with this situation because it's a consequence of you. I just think, yeah, I learned more, as I said, by losing my own money, and I lost lots, than any fancy 2x2 matrix. Although I have to say that the 2x2 matrix often explained something that I didn't know how to name or didn't know how to theory.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So just very quickly, how old is Yardstick?
So we will be 8 on the 10th of January next year.
And how many people have you got?
There's 46 of us now. We started with 3 of us. Myself, a lady called Rebecca, who's still with us, and a chap called Michael Rose, who we bought out as a shareholder a couple of years ago. And he left us and he's now trekking around the world.
Lovely. And what you're saying is that correct me if I'm wrong, that trajectory is fantastic because we know how many agencies get stuck at 12 people, 13 people. They never kind of break through that. Yes, you chose a neat niche at the right time, but you're attributing some of your success to the lessons that you learned first time round.
Yeah, I think there's 3 reasons why we are doing okay at the moment.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them.
One are the people first one is the people we've got in the business. Yeah. From the senior leadership team right the way through the business, we've got fabulous people. So first thing is lessons around recruitment, retention, etc. We've got brilliant people. The next thing is the niche. We talk about this a lot in the mastermind group. The niche for me is just incredibly important. Not the fact that the niche is financial services. Sorry. Not the fact that the niche is financial services, because David Gilroy's got a great agency dealing in the legal sector. But just the fact you have a niche makes life so much easier. David talked about it in one of our mastermind groups, the efficiency of a niche. It's just massive. Yeah. So I think for people, the niche and the lessons learned previously, those three things combined mean we've gone from 3 people to 46, 47, and are doing okay.
So why, just to focus in on this, why isn't how is an agency being run by someone who's lost a business, got spears in their back, scars in their back from the spears? Why is an agency that's run by someone who has previously lost businesses different from an agency run by someone who's never had that experience? What are the things that make Yardstick different that are a consequence of your experience?
I don't think they're all positive. I don't think they're all positive because I'm incredibly risk averse now. And sometimes you need a sprinkling of risk. So I don't think they're all positive. And that would be an example of a negative one. But I think in terms of the positives, focus on getting the right people in. An absolute laser-like focus on cash. Yeah. If we're chatting to various different people, they'll talk about balance sheet, P&L, etc., etc. I am interested in one thing: cash. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. Everything else flows down from there. I think marketing and sales and making sure that we've got money coming in and then that flows through to cash. I think being clearly information security, given what happened, that's kind of important. But I think for me, it's people and cash. Yeah, I'm really simple when it comes to the finances of the business, potentially to our detriment. But for me, everything flows down from how much have we had in this month? How much have we had out? What's the difference? And how does this project forward? How does this project forward? So we will recut our cash flows. I sent you a message the other day, actually, that we've just finished our 2025 cash flows. And we'll recut them every 6 months. And we are really good at predicting expenditure. Predicting income is a little bit harder because there's more variables, people paying you on time. But we're really good at predicting expenses. And that vision of 12 months out, and we're confident in the plan, and focus on cash, incredibly important. The other thing as well is I'm not a big fan anymore of these big, hairy, audacious goals that people talk about. Our cash flow forecast next year, rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying this is how people should do it, but it's based on, right, this is our current level of expenditure. This is the margin we want to make. Therefore, that's what income we need to bring in. Yes, we're happy we can achieve that. It's not a big, hairy, audacious goal. Then myself and other people involved in sales will work bloody hard on marketing and sales, and let's see where we can get this to. I do not want us to have a big, hairy, audacious goal of hitting a certain turnover or profit number that's completely arbitrary and put pressure on ourselves to achieve that. So there's loads there. It's a really rambling answer to a short question.
No, it's a fast. I mean, there's two instant replies. I was at an executive dinner the other day, turned to the guy next to me and said, "Oh, what are you trying to do with your business?" He said, "It's really simple. I want an income of £1 million a year." It's like, all right, that's quite punchy. It's like, how many years do you need that? What do you want at the moment? It says, well, we've got 4 people and we're doing 250,000. Okay, right. So then there's that. And then yesterday we're talking to the American guy who's talking about the consolidation, agglomeration play. Yeah. And his target is 100 million turnover, so the business is worth $1 billion. It's like, but where are we? Where are we now? Well, let me just sketch out. So it's fascinating how people do it, but more importantly, what works for different people. Because I suspect that some people will be more successful than others. Some people will achieve because of their track record and their experience, and so forth. Wow, that's an amazing story, Phil, and really, really, really thought-provoking. There's almost five more hours of work to unpack it all. So I guess, a question for me is you said you don't believe in big, hairy, audacious goals. You look 1 year advance, but as you get older, what is it you want from the business? Are you looking for an exit in 10 years' time? Are you going to run it until you're 90? Do you want to just become chairman? Do you just want it to grow steadily, 45, 65, 80? Do you want to be bought out? Where do you think the next stage might be?
So I think I'm kind of looking 10 years ahead. I was 50 last year, and I'm thinking 10 years ahead. When we started Yardstick, without a doubt, I was thinking build it and sell it. Build it and sell it. I have come away from that now. And that's partly about legacy. It's partly about when someone buys an agency, they're going to change it. Yeah, the culture will get changed, the people will get changed, etc., etc. They're going to change it. It's partly, I just don't think I can face the due diligence and that process. I just don't think I'm up for it. Really don't. Yeah. But it's mostly because I really enjoy what I do. I'm a big, I love what I do. There are a lot of times it feels like work, but there are a lot of times it doesn't feel like work. And I enjoy spending the time with the team. I enjoy spending time with clients. I enjoy what we do at Yardstick and what I'm doing personally day to day. So yes, I want to carry on growing it. My view, again, rightly or wrongly, there'll be a lot of people watching this that think I'm talking complete rubbish. But my view is we will work bloody hard. We will do great stuff for our clients, and let's see where that takes us. Let's see where that takes us, rather than setting an arbitrary goal and having to get there. So again, I think I've got many years, hopefully, left in me at Yardstick, enjoying what we do, trying to create a place where people can feel fulfilled, motivated, and they can get what they want out of their careers at Yardstick, that we deliver value to our clients, and let's see where that takes us. TLDR, no, there's no plan to build it and flog it.
Oh, love it. Final question, really. This has been fascinating. I'd love to talk a lot longer, but time limits and so on permit. I guess what's the takeaway with TLDR? What's the takeaway that you'd like to share with people who are on their first rodeo? The guys and gals who are 5, 10, 15, 20 people. What's the thing you'd like to share?
I think if you are facing business difficulties, if you are facing issues that are potentially a threat to the business's future, find someone that you can talk to. Preferably somebody that, back to what you said about your MBA, preferably somebody who doesn't have theoretical experience of doing it, but has practical experience of doing it. So build that support network around you. Have people that you can go to and talk to, but who have got experience of what you're going through. So I think if you're in that position, that's the advice. If you're in that position of facing a crisis, if you're on the flip side of that, thing that works for me is just being true to yourself of what you want to achieve. Stop trying to do things for the people. Do things that you want to do. Yeah, I could be one of those two guys and said, look, I want to go and sell for 10 times multiple, and I want to be earning £1 million a year. Yeah, my wife wants me to be Brad Pitt, but these things don't happen, do they? Yeah, so be true to yourself, and if you're facing difficulties, then get that support network around you of people who have the practical experience of what you've been going through.